You really have to explain that. Nobody in the world is going to know what that is, except me.
It's a good way of raising questions.
Is it a diagram or is it a real photo from a drone?
It's a real photo. There's a little sea turtle right up, right here. It's from about 500 feet up, and there's a real boat here, and it's got, you can see the translucency of the water.
And that platform thing with black squares, that must be your solar collectors.
It is, yeah. This is 6 by 7 meters. And this boat's 3 meters long.
Hello.
Brian von Herzen knows me.
Yes.
We went to school together.
Right.
What?
We both went to Cal Tech for our PhDs in computer science.
Yes.
Oh, really? And you have you met?
I think we did some work together. You were at HP, if I recall.
Yes, that's right. We tried to enlist you as a consultant, and I think I saw you at the alumni get-together on campus.
Yes, some years ago.
Let me introduce Alan to Marilyn Krieger, the cat lady. Alan is part of us now. I mean, he's actually on the Peace Magazine editorial board, and he's going to move off to Italy in a month or two. But he's been extremely helpful already. And Marilyn lives maybe 100 miles from you, maybe not even that. You live in. Okay, let's see how close you are to each other. Marilyn, where do you live?
I'm in two places. I'm in Redwood City, which is south of San Francisco, and I'm also in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Yeah, so you're 30 miles and 50 miles away from me.
Mm-hmm. Where are you?
I'm in Half Moon Bay presently.
Oh, you're less than 30 miles. Yeah, you're close by. Yeah, well,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're moving to Italy?
Moving to Florence.
Nice.
To escape from the Trump regime.
Yeah, no, I get that one. Believe me, I have a lot of friends that are doing the same thing. Yep.
Really?
We got a global talent visa, and that enabled us to immigrate as permanent residents. We just needed to go through 2 weeks of quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to travel around the state, no problem. The borders were blocked, the state borders. The real problem is it took 2 years to generate 10 billion vaccine doses, and it should take 2 months instead of 2 years. We need to have a rapid scaling capability. And we knew that in 2010 with the bird flu scare. But even after 2025, they still haven't allocated funds that are needed for a rapid deployment of various vaccines that would enable a 2-month response to the next pandemic.
Well, yeah, but it took a long time to invent the thing anyway.
Oh, 3 weeks. 3 weeks we had the code. Yeah, we had the mRNA codes 3 weeks after the sequencing. Yeah, I was working with MIT and Harvard. We had the genetic code for the mRNA vaccine 3 weeks after the code, after the sequences were released.
Well, okay, maybe we're not understanding each other. My memory was there was a year or so when there were no vaccines in the world.
That is correct. None at scale, but the vaccine existed 3 weeks after it was released by the Chinese in the Q1 of 2020. In 3 weeks after that, we had the mRNA structure, and it could be replicated. The mRNA vaccine was synthesized 3 weeks afterwards, and then it took 2 years to scale and replicate that vaccine, and also to verify it. And that is a key thing. But there needs to be what I want to call a medical corps, if you will, of young citizens who serve, and their service is actually to learn about the biochemistry well enough to make informed decisions. And they would ask for volunteers from that corps to do challenge trials. And the challenge trials would be they get the vaccine, they get exposed to COVID or whatever it is, and they look at the prevalence. They can do double blind and all the rest. And Many in the medical profession say, oh, that's immoral and unconscionable. But we had 26 million excess deaths in the last 5 years of this decade. And under that world, under that scenario, and we were lucky because COVID was 0.5% mortality. But what if it had been like the Black Plague or the bubonic plague with 5 to 50% mortality? Well, we would have seen the same results. I mean, except in 1 or 2 orders of magnitude more fatalities. And there's no reason that isn't going to happen the next time. So the point is, challenge trials with a well-informed health core is absolutely essential to actually shortening that time frame. And with those pieces in place, we could actually have a rapid response to the next pandemic, including Ebola. That means our society would be locked down for 2 months instead of 2 years, and quarantine works on that timescale, as evidenced by the one year plus that we got at in Queensland and several other countries, including New Zealand.
Maybe I'll interview you.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Huh?
Happy to discuss this because it's something we put some effort into, and it's something I put into. Back in 2010, we bought property to handle the the bird flu epidemic. And
I've got 2 shows I'm working on that way.
Okay.
Neil Arya has some of his people from Pegasus who are going to be talking about the Ebola thing now. These
Sure.
are people who have been working, who are in Africa on the ground. Or
Mhm.
who is it you were working with?
We worked with several researchers. I serve as an advisor at IXBio, which is a combination of research groups from MIT and Harvard. We also work with UCSF and with San Francisco State University and with the University of Queensland.
Okay, well, look, don't go too far from where you're staying. Are you in Berkeley now or where?
No, I'm actually in Massachusetts on Cape Cod. We synthesized the field of marine permaculture here in Woods Hole. And, it was the last 15 years of working with collaborators at Woods Hole and many other institutions that would come down for the summer that resulted in our synthesizing the field of marine permaculture.
I haven't been to California in many years, 10, 15, maybe 15. I lived in Berkeley for 40 years. No, something shorter than that, but a long time. And so I haven't been out to see my old stomping grounds. And since Alan is there, he's been checking out the civil society movements that are working on these issues. So I was hoping that we could find some sort of partnership or friendship anyway with some sort of civil society organization that has members and that are all concerned about safety issues. And so he's been looking around Berkeley at the AI, Center for AI Safety, CAIS.
We went there. And we saw one of their closing sessions. So I met all the folks there.
Well, tell each other and me what you think about that. What are the options? What do we have available as ways of reaching out to making connections?
Oh, there's probably a lot of options. I do want to preface my remarks by saying that absolute safety is an illusion. That our pioneers that came to America didn't do it for reasons of safety. They if we give away our freedom for the sake of safety, we may be on a not so slow decline to a rather totalitarian state. So we should talk about relative safety and levels of risk. And it seems to me that there are 2 significant outcomes that we should focus on, and that is AI is already in the hands of the few, and that is the tech bros or whatever you want to call it. And the open question is whether we can enable AI in the hands of the many. And by that, I mean decentralized communities, small groups of people, rural places. And to my mind, the real question and the challenge is, can we enable pretty good AI, not only inference, but also training, to be in the hands of the many, and hardware to be in the hands of the many? And by that, I mean rural communities of a few hundred people. And, it's like we're in the 1970s and we're just having this debate about mainframes and centralized computing versus personal computers. And I think we're talking about personal AI as well. Now, note with interest that one of the biggest companies on the planet, NVIDIA, is releasing this quarter a frontier model, Nematron 3 Ultra, which will have 500 billion weights and promises to be a frontier model with great capacity, approaching the competitors, which could potentially, which does in fact have open weights, open source, and open training. And that means that communities could use derivatives of that model to do their own models on their own computers, whether they're on Mac Minis or some other devices. And we're actually working for decentralized AI because at the end of the day, communities need to be able to bring a gun to a gunfight. And like it or not, we need to have the tools for pretty good AI for communities around the world to ensure flourishing human communities for years and decades to come. Thanks.
Well, I think the idea that AI is in the hands of the few is an interesting one. I mean, on the face of it, it's obvious. But the fact is that they make these models available for free. I'm sitting here for 4 or 5 hours a day playing with large language models to get my work done. Mm-hmm. And they charge me a very small amount of money. And so I'm not entirely clear how they make their money. Clearly, they're making a lot of money. Google is paying every time it uses, well, I guess they have their own LLMs, but Google often routes their queries to an LLM now, which is better than the old Google algorithm. Mm-hmm. But still, this is largely available for free. So where are they making their money?
I think, Google has a lot of resources to begin with. This is all about capturing eyeballs. You probably remember back to the 1990s. And it was, the valuations of all the .com companies were based on the eyeball numbers. And so it's a competition for the eyeballs. And everyone's, it's kind of a race to get enough investor dollars. Of course, Google doesn't need external investments. The others are working on that.
But they aren't advertising. They don't sell any ads, are they?
They don't need ads now. They just want to be able to talk about higher numbers, and that will provide them with investor capitalization that eventually translates into revenue.
So they want market dominance.
Yeah, market dominance.
That will translate into revenue down the road.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yes.
Understand.
Mm-hmm. It's a loss leader. But deeply, I mean, you're using these models for inferencing. I use them as well. I'm just beginning to get into actually editing these models, including Nematron, to actually guide and improve AI operation, make them more efficient, less power hungry. Ultimately, we envision running these frontier models on solar arrays without a high degree of density or intensity. And I think there's probably a factor of 1,000 in energy reduction that is possible for good models in the coming few years, less than a decade. So we're interested in power reduction that will enable with manageable solar power and other renewable power to be able to run AI models in your local community with your own hardware. And pretty good AI is probably good enough.
So is there an inevitable diffusion and commoditization that we can look forward to?
Yeah, look at what Apple's betting on. Apple's new CEO and probably chief technologist are both chip guys. They're both hardware guys. So I think Apple's taking the strategy of selling pickaxes and groceries to the miners rather than doing the mining themselves. And what I mean by that is Apple's not trying to build a frontier model. They're just saying, buy our Mac Minis and, we'll just supply all the miners. And of course, every professional organization, like every lawyer, every doctor needs to have their own AI because they, under the HIPAA compliance and under the client attorney privilege, they need to have the provenance of positive control over all the data of their clients with no possibility of it being released to third parties. And so that means they have to run AIs on their own property. And communities will need to do that as well.
We've been very concerned about data centers, and we've been building alliances with some of the people who are in the fights over the data centers.
And compute and memory, first of all, cuts 90% of the power of inference just because you don't have to cross between a high bandwidth memory and a chip. You don't have to run all the weights through the chip. It's sitting right in the memory already. And so there's some innovations there. And of course, Elon Musk is trying to build some memory chips as well as logic chips. And our goal is to be able to operate decentralized data centers in deserts, in ocean deserts, and even in space, where we'll probably see cheaper data centers constructed just potentially 3 to 5 years from now.
I should interrupt long enough to say hi to our new attendees, Alexey Bokorenko and Charles David Tauber in Vukovar, Croatia. He's a psychiatrist working with victims of trauma. He's doing therapy with trauma, war victims or war perpetrators, I guess, too. Alexey is a Russian who left so he didn't have to go kill Ukrainians. And good for you. Brian has this, I've heard your speech a whole bunch of times because during the inquiry that we did on AI safety, you were very upfront about talking about having control of AI in the hands of the many. And again, I'm not very comfortable with that because what I hear, Bengio, for example, regards epidemiology as the worst threat to humankind. Because if you get a high school kid with a computer who is interested in genomes or viruses or something, they can make a lethal virus that would be curtains for the human race, and in their bedroom. So I'm sorry, but that is a troubling notion, and that please now defend yourself, Brian.
Well, I think Mythos is an excellent example. If you have Mythos, you can either hack other people or defend your own systems from being hacked. If communities don't have AI at their disposal, then it'll be, arrows against guns, swords against spears against guns.
How is that going to help you? So say I hear that my next door neighbor has invented a lethal germ that's going to kill the human population. So I go to my local library, and Mythos is right there waiting for me to use it. And it's the whole community's property. And here I am ready to use it. What the hell would I do with it? How would
Tools are powerful, and they can be used for good or for evil. Ultimately, you've got multiple horsemen of the apocalypse, and certainly pestilence is one of them. But these capabilities have existed before AI as well. And in fact, one might argue that it was gain-of-function research by the United States and China that led to the SARS-CoV-2. So, this is the third time that China has inadvertently released a coronavirus. So, I think it was probably an accident, but the heads of state are proposing a more clear and present danger to us now than anything else, because who's inventing the autonomous killing machines? It is the United States government and the Chinese government today. And even the Ukrainian government a little bit. So one could argue that the communities need to have a pretty good AI just to defend themselves from these state actors.
But you can't defend yourself. That's the problem. The more people who have access to these things, the more people are inevitably going to create things that we don't want them to have.
Well, we know that things end badly when the hegemons have all the control.
No.
Just read Goliath's Curse, and I think we'll have a pretty good picture of what has happened in the last 400 civilizations by Luke Kemp. He's a PhD out of Cambridge who wrote an excellent book, and I recommend reading Goliath's Curse as a good example of understanding what happens when we have hegemonic rule. Sorry?
We did it recently, a book review. Did you know that?
Of Goliath's Curse?
Yeah.
Very good. I'm really glad.
I don't remember much about it. But
Well, it was how do 400 civilizations fall when the Gini index gets too high? And we're getting perilously close to that in the United States as well as the Philippines.
sorry, but I mean, you just cannot have everybody with guns. You cannot have everybody. That does not help. And you cannot have everybody with access to things that enable them to kill off the
Well,
human.
let's describe the situation the way it is today, right? The colonialists have landed on the East Coast. They've got guns. We've got a bunch of Native Americans that either have guns or don't have guns. And the reality is, the question is whether to arm the Native Americans or not. I think that's where we are now.
Listen, guys, I'm not the only person here. Okay, Alexey, Alan is sitting and waiting. You're holding your fire, Alan. So
No, I don't have any fire. I don't disagree with anything Brian is saying. I am impressed with Brian's articulateness and the fact that he has thought through many of these issues at a deep level. I'm impressed that he's working with NVIDIA on their latest chips. What can I say? I have nothing to compare. I have been concerned about the AI data centers, but the question of the diffusion of the technology to the public is a very interesting one. Now, it's not that everyone will have a gun. Everyone will have a magical machine which is capable of doing good or evil.
Agreed.
And as we know from the internet, there will be many evil actors. And they are, in fact, doing it today. You see all sorts of public social media posts that are synthesized by AI. And some of them are quite obnoxious. But people will also have the ability to run entire businesses out of their home. So it's a double-edged sword.
Oh, I am the biggest fan of AI in the world, except I'm also the most scared of anybody. I mean, I am completely ambivalent. There's nothing in between. It's a wonderful thing, and it may kill us all before we even have the chance to know. But, it's like right now we've got Ebola. Now, you tell me how anybody here in Toronto could, given whatever technology Mythos had available, how he's going to keep Torontonians safe from Ebola if the airplane lands with somebody on it who's got the germ. Now, I do not see how that's going to protect anybody.
So there's an analogy to nuclear power. The average graduate student in physics could construct a nuclear bomb, but it hasn't happened. And that's because there are very strong safeguards and controls. And I think we have to have something like that to prevent the next synthetic virus from being created, because it's absolutely true. In fact, Google has a project to synthesize DNA for benevolent purposes, but it could easily be turned to malevolent purposes. It's already happening today. So we have to have controls and safeguards and regulations to prevent that from getting out of the lab and into the streets. At the same time, we don't want to stop people from inventing the next business model.
And I will say, in Australia, they're somewhat overly paranoid on recombinants and on foreign organisms getting in. And the result is that the recombinant research has been significantly delayed relative to the United States.
Okay, now I don't think it's the reason not everybody has a nuclear weapon is not that we've kept the knowledge located in secure places. No. Any high school kid who's determined can learn enough to make a nuclear weapon. The reason they don't is they can't get hold of the fissile material. And that's why we don't want to have reprocessing permitted, because the more reprocessing you do, the more material there is lying around for people to pick up and use. So then we would have everybody having his own nuclear weapon. Now, what good is that going to do us if you and I and everybody here has a nuclear weapon? Thank God. That will really help everything.
Mm.
Well, I don't think it's quite the same. I mean, some would say that Canada's been leaning into nuclear power, which is not unrelated. And some would say that's even a low carbon future, even though we got some issues with the nuclear waste. So that's an example of the positive side of the sword that Alan was referring to.
And AI is not a weapon in itself. AI is only a weapon if it's turned toward evil purposes.
Agreed.
And you think there's any shortage of evil purposes? Look, think of that air pilot who had a whole plane full of people, and he takes the whole plane down into the ocean on purpose. He's crazy. Another one runs his plane into a mountain and kills everybody on board. He's crazy. Well, yeah, there are a few crazy people in the world. It only takes one here and there, like 1/10 of 1% of 1/100th. But
well, you're right that the danger of a synthetic Ebola is fantastically high. Mm-hmm. And the threshold to make it is unfortunately lower than we would like. So in that sense, it's not a perfect analogy to nuclear weapons. So yes, I would say the danger is higher of some amateur epidemiologist inventing the next lethal pathogen.
I would even say the danger of existing Ebola is high. And that is, we fumbled the future so badly that Ebola is coming out because the vaccine policies of the United States, and not to mention the US aid failure to fund, has resulted in this Ebola outbreak. So we can thank the Trump administration for this one.
Absolutely. In fact, I made a post to that effect just the other day on Facebook.
Wonderful. Well, so, let's talk about a hypothetical that I think that what would we do if Ebola suddenly landed on our shores and we had to deal with it? Well, there is an outline of what we can do, and that is, first of all, set up quarantine. Secondly, sequence the Ebola. Third, sequence an mRNA vaccine. And fourth, have a rapid replication in order to get 10 billion doses made in 2 months rather than 2 years. And the fifth would be to have a health corps in place, seeking volunteers for challenge trials that would demonstrate the efficacy and utility of the vaccine in 2 months rather than 2 years. Now, 2 of those steps are missing. The rapid replication step is not funded, and the health corps is not funded. And if we made those 2 policy changes, we could be prepared to have, quarantine be highly effective and to actually protect the lives of citizens around the world.
Meta, you said you wanted to do an article on Ebola for Peace Magazine. I think you just heard it.
Well, I wouldn't say a word against what Brian has said, of course, but it's not anywhere near enough.
It's a policy request. I mean, this is something we should publish. The policy needs to be the rapid deployment of vaccines and the health corps force being funded.
Fine. I have no problem with that. I agree with you, absolutely. But do I think it's going to prevent a pandemic? No. I think it might take the edge off. It might.
Yeah, if we're talking 2 months rather than 2 years, then we're talking about $10 trillion rather than $100 trillion of world gross domestic product reduction.
Okay, well, certainly that's a good idea. Let's do the show. But I mean, really what I was thinking is having the conversation with Ron St. John and one of the other WHO officials or somebody about the politics and the finances and so on of trying to get, health measures back in place that Trump has scuttered. What should we do now?
I think we should develop a health corps, and we should call for a rapid deployment capability so that when the next, virus comes along, we can defend ourselves against it. And to quote Buckminster Fuller, nation states are the blood clots of civilization. So the inequitable distribution of vaccine is as much to blame as the lack of vaccine itself.
I don't have a problem with that. All I do is, like everybody else, I want my shot as soon as possible.
And we need to, we need to ensure, like, we're all brothers and sisters from just 50,000 years ago, all around the planet, and we need to take care of our brothers and sisters.
I had isolated myself, and I think it was exactly why I'm alive today. And I did not catch it until I'd already been vaccinated. And it was the delivery man who brought it. It has to have been. There was nobody else in my apartment. And I got it 2 years after, or 2 or 3 years after it started, and had to go to hospital. And thank God I survived. But I wouldn't have, and I can't imagine anybody saying, not to use quarantines.
Yeah. Well, we isolated for 5 years. We never got COVID. We did take our vaccines. And my dentist this year gave me COVID for the first time. So we managed to get through it. It wasn't too severe, but a month of isolation was extremely severe through a funeral and a memorial service and being on the road in Los Angeles.
Oh, you mean you got COVID
while traveling this year for the first time?
Uh-huh. Okay. I don't know anybody else who has escaped it completely. Maybe we should give other people a chance to talk about what's on their minds. So, Alexey, what's happening with Poland? I hear you guys are going to have the privilege of hosting a batch of American soldiers that you weren't waiting for.
Well, it was just a little bit of a funny history, because initially we were scheduled not to have those soldiers, and even Donald Trump confirmed that he would reduce the number of personnel stationed here in Poland. But then he remembered that our president, Karl Nawrocki, is his personal friend, and overnight he changed his mind and he decided to send those soldiers to Poland because of his personal friendship. He told us, say thank you to your president. We're personal friends.
Are people eager to be protected by American soldiers there?
Well, I guess it's strange, but most people I've talked to are a little bit skeptical about NATO, and they've grown that way even more since Donald Trump came to power in the US. And even during Joe Biden's administration, many of my friends, colleagues here were skeptical that NATO would do something to protect Poland. Yeah, sorry.
I don't know what to wish for.
Yeah, but there is also a question. We are in a bit of a privileged position because we have a strong army, which is currently one of the strongest in NATO, probably next to Turkish, maybe French. But I'm more concerned about the Baltic countries like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Their armies are not so big, and they can't be big due to the size of those countries. Each country is about 1 or 2 million people, and they cannot just physically have a big army. And there's a big question mark if the U.S., at least under Donald Trump, will ever scramble to protect those countries from eventual Russian invasion, which some people think is possible, although I'm doubtful.
It'd probably be Moldova next, wouldn't it?
It's a landlocked country, and Putin has no way to reach it other than by winning Ukraine, where he's stuck and where the Ukrainians are starting to gain more and more ground. Putin doesn't have the power to do so. So many weapons have been lost in Ukraine. So many people were killed or wounded in Ukraine. So he doesn't have the clout to attack any other country. So I think it's not going to go beyond talks. And there's no certainty what the NATO forces will do, if they will interfere and rise to protect their allies, because Donald Trump is unpredictable. He may or may not do something to defend those countries, but he also may, of course. But talking to people from those capitals, from the capitals of those 3 exposed countries, I get a feeling that they're really scared. They're pretty scared. They're pretty scared.
Charles Tauber, tell us about your world.
Well, we're going in very different directions. We're talking about physicians playing with people and physicians not really going to the traumatization of people. We're working on a project with a man in Ottawa, John Hintz, and we're trying to figure out how to get more people. And in fact, I may give him the reference to this group to invite people to come, because his idea is to get as many people as possible working on the traumatization of things. And that's, of course, been our idea for a very long time. The traumatization in places like Croatia has not really diminished much in the 30 years that I've been here. And that's a problem. We're also talking about the transmission of trauma, and that gets into Gaza and Israel as well. My colleague is working locally here, primarily with old people who are highly traumatized. We're also working with Russians in exile and trying to work with their traumatization and trying to help them, at least give them a place where they can talk. There are people in Congo who want work on this traumatization. And now, of course, with Ebola, this is going to be even more so.
Well, I can only do what Alexey did a while ago, display my fingers.
Yeah.
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 One goes
Yeah, fingers crossed.
there. Is that proper? That's the way you do it? But you could do other fingers, I guess. Some people could probably do the little fingers, couldn't they?
And don't forget the toes.
The tongue?
Speaking of toes, we've got a dog who wakes me up in the morning by eating my toes. He's a rather large Newfoundlander, and yeah,
Okay.
I get my feet washed every morning.
What is going on in California that is problematic, an issue that needs to be solved, that different people have different approaches toward?
Homelessness.
Homelessness.
Homelessness and housing.
Okay, and
Cost of living.
I read that book Abundance by Ezra Klein, and at the time it sounded pretty convincing.
Friends, please excuse me. I have a huge amount of work to do tonight, and it's already 9:00.
All right. Well,
So-
bless you, my friend. I wish we could do something to help you.
Well,
We
we'll
see
see
our
you
moral
next week,
blessings.
I hope.
Okay.
And, please stay in touch.
Yeah, and give our love to your dog. Anybody with a new angle on something?
It's bleak. This is some of the bleakest times that I have ever experienced.
I'm with you.
And I think we're in a crisis.
But you're leaving, you lucky guy.
I am going to a country which has a neo-fascist government, and but I don't believe they will go full fascist. A very corrupt government, a very bureaucratic government, but I cannot bear to stay here and see this country turn fascist.
I understand.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Because I observed it in Russia, which has turned fascist, unfortunately.
Oh, yes. And in fact,
On my watch.
we are repeating many of the lessons of Russia.
In fact, I just listened to the development of the democracy of Switzerland, and it started with 3 provinces, and they just agreed on common defense. and they had to fight off the Habsburgs for centuries. I think it was in the 1400s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting to understand the history and how much violence was involved in their maintaining their independence.
Mm.
I feel like we need to develop decentralized communities and bioregions that can defend themselves and each other against fascism.
Go on, elaborate.
Well, ultimately, it's about building stellar communities, and stellar communities will have the abundance to enable abundant energy, food, and labor, including AI and robotics. Will be able to defend rural communities and decentralized communities against invaders. And
So please speak more about stellar communities. This sounds like a loaded word.
Yes, it is. There's a book called Stellar by Tony Seba, one of my mentors from Stanford, and it's been out for about a year. We've done a few book reviews of Stellar over the past year, and I encourage getting the audiobook and reading it, and happy to discuss it here or on other fora.
Should we do a book review for Peace Magazine?
I would encourage that.
We did something already. I read the book and I liked a lot of it. I thought it was way more optimistic than I would be.
Well, what I like is there's a fundamental basis, a deflationary basis for that optimism. It sets aside a vision, and we're dedicating our resources at the Climate Foundation to realizing that vision and moving the stepping stones from where we are today to stellar communities within 10 years.
And what would a stellar community look like?
It would be the first time that a community has moved post-extraction in 6,000 years. And it would have an abundance of battery, wind, and solar, food security in the form of precision fermentation, precision agrivoltaics, and precision mariculture. The last two we have added. And it would also have abundant labor in developed regions with AI and robotics, and in developing regions with full employment.
So let me ask, what happens when society falls apart and we can no longer maintain technology and we're forced back to subsistence methods of farming?
Well, that's what this is all about, is having food security for the residents using these three methods that I've mentioned. The first of which promises to be able to feed 8 to 10 billion people using 70 times less land area through the use of precision agrivoltaics, hydrogen oxidizing bacteria, and precision fermentation of other types.
I'm afraid I can't remember what precision agrivoltaics is.
That's where you've got vertical bifacial panels and vegetables in the same acres, and that means you get PV and you get vegetables. You're not choosing between food security and energy security.
So what I hear is a belief that technology will save us. That's the only part of it that makes me cautious.
Yeah, it's appropriate technology. It's necessary but not sufficient. We need to add to that good governance. And I think we've got some examples of good governance with the sociocratic circle method and with modern polity by Audrey Tang. Those two things together can enable communities to move beyond the tyranny of a democracy, as we've witnessed in the United States since 2024, and towards a consent of the governed. And the decisions end up being higher quality. And then at a network of communities level, the citizens' assemblies developed by Audrey Tang in Taiwan over the past 10 years have proven to be highly effective as well.
And how do we ensure that this is not just a privilege of the 1%?
I think the ultimate goal of any stellar community should be to develop a sister community, whether it's nearby or on another continent. And we should use our abundance to ensure exponential growth of stellar communities that will enable ultimately the full human population to enjoy the stellar offtake rights that enable abundant energy, food, and labor for all residents, and ultimately enable humanity to flourish in a decentralized way.
I was impressed by how quickly he expected me to be able to go buy a quart of fermented yeast or something at the grocery store, but I haven't seen any yet. And I am so keen to drink some of that stuff. Have you ever tasted it?
Well, I have. There's various precision fermented products already today. In fact, they're producing EPA and DHA in Nebraska using a precision fermentation process. But there are proteins being made today. They cost about $10 per kilogram, including whey and casein. And those proteins can be synthesized at a cost of around $10 per kilo today, and approaching $1 per kilo over the coming decade.
Well, see, I'm ready to pay $10 once. I mean, not every day, but I'm just so curious about what it tastes like.
We're at price parity on dairy today in terms of the costs, and the products need to be made, and we're interested in enabling that with seaweed. That's one of the products in our product development pipeline. The first one is biostimulant. We imported our first case of biostimulant just this year, and that was last quarter. And I've been handing out biostimulant to every farmer I meet up and down the west coast of the United States.
Okay.
So, Brian, tell me, how do we get the vast public to buy into this idea when half of them just want to go back to the past?
Well, this is going back to the past. It's going back to farming and rural living, and we call it a rural restart, which is basically leave your cities behind. There's plenty of room in the country, and in the country you can get replete energy, replete food, available labor, and replete communications with your Starlink connection.
And all we're missing is jobs.
Well,
or a free income.
Yeah, I mean, I think stellar output rights is the way you measure real wealth, because it's not bits in a bank. It's having plenty of energy, plenty of food, and plenty of labor for you and your friends and your community.
I know plenty of people who would move out to the country. The problem is they can't find good employment.
Who needs money when you've got community credit pools?
Okay.
So the vision is with our Regenerative Currency Federation that I'm working with to enable community credit pools to scale. We have a number of examples from the last century that were highly successful until shut down by central banks.
No idea what that is. What is a credit pool?
Well, you have credit unions, which are one kind of thing that everyone's familiar with. And a credit pool is one where people pledge goods or services. Say, I'll, provide you with these goods or services in the community for, a certain number of community credits, and those exchange. And that worked in the 1930s in Wurgel, Austria, and it worked in Basel, Switzerland for a year and a half until the central banks shut them down. And I recommend reading up on the miracle of Wurgel and the miracle of Basel, which in the middle of the Depression caused these communities to flourish.
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't have anything that I could offer. I only do things like this, which isn't something anybody would be wanting to pay for.
One thing we're actually working on is documenting the proof of participation. And that is when we show up and materially participate in a meeting like this, you hand out credit units that say, you folks participated and you get these credits. And then we define how the credits are used. Those are what I call proof of participation, and tokens can be developed around those. And then Ben Hunt developed in the early 2020s something called proof of plant. And that is when you grow a plant, and we have to decide what the measurement parameters are. Take a selfie with your plant. You get a token for having grown your plant. And ideally, it can be part of a food forest. And that's a representative for natural capital and primary production. So this is a way that we can measure environmental capacity and social capacity in addition to financial capacity. Triple bottom line. And I think you can only manage what you measure. And so we're looking forward to measures of social capacity, such as proof of participation in events like these. And I think that's valuable, Meta.
Let me tell you what still scares me about this. It requires a big checkbook. There's a lot of socially progressive causes that are clearly admirable, and yet somebody has to pay for them. And we're starting from a situation in which a retrograde government will not pay for them. So is that an accurate perception?
Yes and no. I mean, at a nation state level, perhaps, but we don't have the ability to change nation states. But we do have the ability to change our communities. And those communities, I mean, even with, let's say, angel capital, it turns out, one of the great things about all these stellar technologies is they're deflating dramatically. We can see an order of magnitude decrease in solar, renewable, and battery power over the coming decade, to the point where replete electricity can be provided and had for probably a few $100s in capital expenditure. In terms of the proteins, as the proteins approach $1 per kilo, how many kilos of protein can you eat in a year? 300 maybe? And so, we'll have vegan protein available. And so you're spending $300 a year on your vegan protein. And then labor-wise, well, the cost of robotic labor is $10 an hour today, and $1 an hour in 2035, and 10 cents an hour in 2045. So all of these costs are dropping exponentially, which means that with a relatively small angel budget, we'll be able to provide and prototype these stellar communities at community scale. And then with the abundance and surplus that's produced from these communities, enable these communities to replicate themselves with sister communities around the world.
I can see Alan's gears whirling. Where my gears go weird is two contradictory visions of abundance. I mean, when you read the book Stellar,
Mm-hmm.
You're giving a good picture of that.
Mm-hmm.
How we can be prosperous and comfortable in our lifestyle, and have everything we need, even though we don't use a lot of money for it.
Mm-hmm.
But the vision that the people, the billionaires running AI, they assure us that we're all going to be rich because AI is going to create so much wealth that we'll all have 5 mansions in different countries of the world, and etc. We will be living like Donald Trump with golden toilets and things.
Well, the billionaires will.
Oh, that's the question.
Yes.
Those are two different visions of abundance, put forward by presumably quite different communities. I mean, they're not compatible, but is there any credibility about any of it?
Oh, these things will reset themselves, as Goliath's curse articulated well. When the Gini index gets too high, you have a revolution, and then things get evened out. And so that's going to happen one way or another. It's happened 400 times before. It'll happen again, either peacefully or violently. And, we had the Civil War in the United States, and what was it, 500,000 people or more were killed in the US. But at the same time, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Alexander Herzen, had a peaceful, he wrote Kolokolo, which is Russia's first underground newspaper. And through over a period of 5 or 10 years, he actually emancipated the serfs, or contributed to the emancipation of the serfs peacefully by distributing this newspaper and recommending that the serfs be emancipated, which occurred the same year in 1865. So we can have it either way.
Alexey, you told us about our friend, did you?
Well, I didn't know this, and I'm just dumbfounded by my new discovery, and just that's something like shaking hands with history, like talking to a grandson of Alexander Herzen with a distant past, about which I read in my school books and in books.
Well, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and I think it's our privilege to try to pay it forward and ensure a bright and decentralized future for humanity.
I can't agree more.
I don't think you know the legend, and maybe Alexey knows. I only came across Alexander Herzen through my interest in Gorbachev. And one of these stories is that there's a certain point in Moscow, and I think it's the place where people go, and it's kind of a place where you can overlook the city up by the university, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the hills. That's where he went, and he took an oath to free the serfs, something like that. And when Gorbachev was a university student, I think it was, after the big revelations by Khrushchev, that he also went to that same place and took an oath for democracy or something like that, freedom. Now, I believe his friend Mlinaj was the one who told that story, but I may have it all wrong. And at any rate, that's the only place I remember having learned that the name von Herzen was extremely important historically. And what do you know about this, about Brian's great-grandfather, Alexey?
Well, I've heard that legend as well, and it seems quite plausible because Gorbachev was a man of values, after all. He was a man of conviction, which is unfortunately, which has become all the more seldom and rare in our times, in our day and age, where we have more and more politicians just playing on people's vices, just like Putin does. Putin has one talent, and probably the only one talent that he has is that he can find vices in people. Some people have fears. Some people have some misconceptions. Some people have lust for money. Some people have, let's say, some anger against someone else. He can find in any. Unlike a true leader who makes his people grow, Putin is masterfully finding whatever vice anyone has, and he plays on those vices. And that's the kind of leaders that are unfortunately very frequent today. Gorbachev was a man of conviction, which has helped him, which has made him such a great figure in this history of the 20th century, and we seriously lack those leaders. And I guess your forefather, your great-great-grandfather, was also a man of conviction, because he could have lived as a noble man, as a noble landowner, using and abusing his serfs. He could have thrived on slave labor, but he chose to do otherwise.
That's right. He was exiled, I believe, in the shortly after 1840s, and had to live out his life in, I think, London and Paris.
Yeah.
And he died in Nice. But from afar, he was able to write the underground newspaper Kolokol, and he was able to reach out and effectively lobby for the emancipation of the serfs peacefully.
Mm.
This spot where he took this oath, I don't know what that is, but I can only imagine that it's the place where everybody goes to sort of stand around and look over Moscow, because it's up on, it's right on the grounds of the university. Is that the spot where he's supposed to have done that? Do you know?
It might be a little bit of a legend, because that place paved quite recently and made into an observation desk. It was probably in the 1940s. It was made, but the truth is that it could be true as well, because it is part of the so-called Sparrow Hills, a chain of hills which is surrounding the Moskva River, and so it's possible that it could have been some kind of an observation point, even back then, because it offers a great view of the city.
Yeah.
Sparrow
It's
Hill.
the Sparrow Hills observation point is the site that was mythologized in Russian history as the spot where 19th century Herzen and Nikolai Ogarev took an oath as youths to fight against the Tsarist autocracy and dedicate their lives to the Russian people.
So it would be the same place then, where I imagined it. I had a much more mundane adventure in that spot. I think, when I was there, they have these little matryoshka dolls and things. They were selling little things, but they also had a big life-size cardboard cutout of Gorbachev. You could get your picture taken with hugging him.
Actually, it's in Peace Magazine.
Is it?
This article. It's called "Deception for the Sake of Truth." Mikhail Gorbachev, Peace Magazine archive.
Yeah, that was my story, but I don't actually remember the historical facts about the location. Anyway, it's nice to meet you, great grandson.
My pleasure.
Really.
Well, I think we all have the chance of paying it forward.
My life will never be quite the same. once I learned this about you.
You come into contact with greatness.
We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and I think it's up to us to make, it's a legacy, and it's extremely important.
If we each took an oath today, what is the oath we should all be taking?
Freedom is not free. Safety, absolute safety, is an illusion, but fighting for freedom is highly worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. But Alan's going to go to Italy where he doesn't have to fight for freedom.
Look, I'm a dual citizen of the U.S. and Australia. I haven't given up on the U.S. yet, but I do have a safety parachute. That's a survival strategy. And Alan can do the same thing.
Jill, bring us up to date on your weekend.
Oh, I just came from the Quaker meeting down at Friend's house and listening to something called apartheid-free community building. So this is being done by the AFSC, that is the American Friends Service Committee, out of Philadelphia as a national program. So they were just explaining to us what that looked like. So this is basically educating, advocating, and divesting in Israel over the current Gaza problem.
Oh, it's about Israel.
Yeah. They're trying to build from their 300 Quaker communities in the United States and their various overseas connections to try to
Okay, guys, thanks so much. I've had fun, and you have a good week, and I'll maybe see some of you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah,